All right, guys. I've decided that instead of just jumping right into whatever I talk about each time for these live streams, that I will plan on taking about at least a solid probably 2 minutes just to let people trickle in. So if you're watching this after, later, not catching the live stream, but watching it potentially days or hours later, just go ahead and skip forward a little bit because I'm going to wait until about 1 or 2 minutes after before really starting the conversation so I can get a few people who are already in. So if you guys are trickling in now, I will officially start in a couple minutes. I want to give at least 10 or 20 people a chance to show up. So if you're watching this later, just skip forward a little bit. Use the time to go buy yourself a Rule the Wasteland survival fishing kit, the only survival kit with a full apocalypse money back guarantee. As I've said before, if you die in the apocalypse after having this, I'll give you a refund. Don't think about it. Just go buy it. We have micro one too. These are so small, so light. All the essentials you need. Eat some fishy meats in the apocalypse. So we got 9 or 10. I will start. Let's say I'll go right at 6:02. I'll go ahead and launch into it because it's crazy how much um, weirdness is happening. So I will get started in just 1 minute and take this moment to write down any potential questions or topics you'll have. Probably not going to go too long today. I got a appointment that I have to go to. So 30, 40 minutes, make it fast and furious. Um, but there's definitely a lot of weirdness going on in the world that we'll talk about. So take this couple seconds before I officially get started to jot down any potential topics or questions you'll have for a few minutes from now. So, all right, we got 11 people in here. Let's go ahead and kick it off. The main thing, this will be a little bit about politics, but not about politics, just in so much as they relate to us knowing what's going to happen in the next several months, if not years. So in that sense, you can't ignore politics. Um, Even if you don't care or whatever your feelings are, we always smart to try and know what's going on. And, I would have said, I was just talking to a friend about this, but back in 2020, when the election was looking good for Trump, and then all sorts of weirdness happened, which, regardless of what you think about whether there was any sort of malfeasance or whatever, there was definite weirdness, lots of weird stuff happening. And I was just thinking, like, you know what? If this is just, you couldn't script this stuff where it's going to be, it looks like he lost and then potentially come back if they find out anything weird did happen and prove it, then he could end up being president after all. And I'm like, this is just like a movie. It's wild. But then it just kind of fizzled out in like what would be the most realistic, boringly mundane way that this sort of thing would happen after such weirdness, where it just kind of fizzled out and he ended up not being president. And then you're like, well, life's not a TV show. But then we get the next season. And this, if you had even told me then the stuff that has happened in the meantime, uh, or it got even far worse for Trump and then now to where we are now versus 6 months ago, insanity. Far more crazy than them actually figuring out there was any sort of malfeasance and even overturning that election. What's happening now is even more crazy than that in my mind. Biden just dropping out and officially endorsing Harris, uh, whatever. But the problem is that, like I've mentioned before in talking with JJ and in my other live streams, the most dangerous thing for stability is uncertainty, whether that's in the markets, whether that's geopolitical. Knowing what's going to happen, people can make decisions based on that, and people can have some sense of the future, and that diminishes fear a little bit. Kind of like the devil you know kind of thing. The devil you know is better than the one you don't. There's always that in humans, just uncertainty and unknown future is always the most scary and the most likely to make people uh, make crazy or rash decisions or risk off decisions. And that's where we're at right now. Like there's just no, even in this several months, there's no way to predict what could have happened. And it's going to get even weirder. Going to get even weirder. And what does that mean for preparedness? Well, to some extent, you have to kind of try to know what's going to happen to figure out what we're going to do. It seems like Donald Trump being president is much more priced in now than 6 months ago, but it's not guaranteed. It's not even guaranteed without any shenanigans, and we could certainly have tons of shenanigans, whether that's on purpose, whether that's black swan type events, whether that's because we don't even know how all these other countries, they're not going to like this uncertainty. And so, like I said in my last live stream with JJ, I think the most dangerous time, they're probably going to want to wait and see what happens with the election, or at least get a sense of who the official nominee is, what the actual race is looking like, what the polling is looking like a few weeks out. We are still, we are having days where decades happen now. There's a saying, sometimes there's years where nothing happens, or decades where nothing happens, and years where decades happen, something along those lines. We're having days where decades happen, or weeks where decades. Look at what's happened in the past month. One single month, and you have enough crazy headlines that could fill a history book, like we were talking about. You could make a whole "We Didn't Start the Fire" song about the past 6 months. Like "We didn't start the fire, children of the lit," like all those historical events. You could do that about the past 6 months, and you could fill a whole song. Madness. I don't think people are adjusting. Normalcy bias kicks in where people are not even realizing how insane this past couple of years has been and how the next year or two is going to be, because of just people are sort of adapting to this level of like huge, you know, year-long headline type stories happening on a daily basis. It's just absolutely insane. And what I've focused on is looking at all the predictions that people made. I told you guys about that spreadsheet I made, and I'm going to make a video about this too, not just a live stream, where the one thing I've learned from tracking predictions, including my own, is that, my initial thing was, we'll find out who's a little more right than others. Everyone is wrong about everything anytime they make a specific prediction. Even Michael Burry of The Big Short, if he was almost lost everything because he was a little bit early. He was literally, if he had made those decisions maybe a month or two earlier, he would have lost everything. A month or two later, he might have had an extra $1 billion or something like that. So I think the thing that we should all focus on is not making decisions that are based on very specific benchmarks or timelines needing to happen. So even something like I said, Michael Burry, knowing and being correct about the housing market being weak and about it going to collapse, the decisions you make to profit or, just act on that, you have to be very careful, because if you make it too specific in the wrong way, you could be right and still be completely destroyed by it. Oh, how terrible is wisdom when it brings no profit to the wise, as the man says. So who are the front runners going after the Democratic nomination? Obviously, the main, if you look at the betting markets, if you look at just who's actually on the ticket, Kamala is the front runner in every sense. I think they know that she is not have a good shot against Trump, for the main reason that being that she's just horribly unlikable, but also she is the Biden administration. It's the same administration. Even the people who didn't think that Biden was officially senile or actually had dementia, they knew he was faltering and that there was a lot of other people probably making all the day-to-day decisions. So they kind of accepted that, like, it's the administration. It's not just Biden. But that can work against him too, because that's still who's there. And so if she's carrying kind of automatically all the baggage that the Biden campaign has, other than the fact that she specifically doesn't have dementia, but she is just as much of like an unknown because she's so stupid, so unlikable, that people are not necessarily going to feel better about her having the power and the nuclear button than they are about a doddering old. They might be more scared by that, thinking that, like, with Biden, it's at least, intel officials, maybe just whoever the next generals were, maybe they're making decisions. But with Kamala, she might actually be making the decisions, and that's worse. So, I mean, Alex Jones has come out and said that he really thinks that Hillary is the one who's going to try to push for this. It all depends on who really has the power in the Biden administration. If they're the ones ceding power and making this decision, or if they're doing that to ensconce themselves and burrow in and behind Kamala. I don't know. I don't know how it works behind the scenes. I know that Vivek Ramaswamy is probably taking a victory lap right now, because he was one of the earliest people saying, end this farce that Joe Biden is going to be your nominee. He'd been saying very adamantly from very early on that he was not going to be the nominee. He was right about that. So it's hard to say how it's going to break down, but that's why we need to make our decisions based on turmoil and uncertainty, not based on being certain that a specific thing is going to happen. So we had election manipulation, certainly possible. Donna says, I'm here after getting stuck in all the airport mess. Yikes. Well, hopefully you got out of that. Airport in general have been exceptionally bad. And that's some weirdness with the crowd strike. I don't even know if I want to say what my true thoughts on what that all could potentially be. But obviously, so for B. William, the official front runner is Kamala by a large margin. Then the other possibles are, of course, Newsom, Hillary. I've heard Gretchen Whitmer. Those would be and I really don't. It really does seem Michelle Obama does not actually want to do this. So I'm not putting that as a major possibility, which is probably good because I think that barring it being like publicized or turning out that it is actually a dude, I think she would be Trump's toughest opponent for the simple reason, kind of like I said, that she would be viewed as the administration. Like most people were just remembered the Obama years fairly fondly. Other than all the horrible stuff that he did. But, in general, it's a lot more palatable. There's a lot of, he would get all the anti-Trump vote and even some of the moderates because they'd be like, oh, another Obama administration. That's fine. That's a known commodity kind of thing. And so I'm hopefully that that's not the case. Yeah, and that is true. The Utah Mike saying that you really can't say I can't be the nominee, but it's still okay that I'm the president for the next 6 months. It's one way or the other. Are you fit or are you not? To be like, I'm just fit enough to serve for 6 months, but not be the nominee. Doesn't really pass the muster. But I hope he doesn't drop out or resign. Just for the same reason. Uncertainty making Kamala officially. I just don't know what that would entail, and it can't be good. For the time being, I would like to maintain as close to status quo as possible. Trump to ride this momentum that he has, this current insane momentum high into the election, which we're going to see a lot more weirdness between now and then. And that's what I would hope to happen. It's no more craziness, and it just ride this advantage to the end. So we'll see. Kamala's talking about passage of time as well. Yeah, she's a nut. Yeah, exactly. I wish Biden would have stayed in. I do think he definitely beats Kamala too, though, for the reasons I mentioned. But it's still more of a slightly more of a risk, I think. Some pundits are suggesting that many are trying to distance themselves from Biden, Harris, and focusing on 2028. Yeah, I think more importantly, I think the semi-intelligent, rational ones are trying to make sure that they don't work this so bad by clinging on to this, dragging the Biden camp or Biden administration's corpse to the actual election day, that they destroy any chance of even a modest performance in the midterms, let alone 2028. And also, I think if they were smart, they would know that it's extremely unlikely that whoever we have for president, that we get through the next 4.5 years, without there being extreme economic and socio-economic geopolitical turmoil. Regardless, Trump's not going to be able to stop it. Certainly a Democratic administration wouldn't be able to stop it. It's going to happen, and that's what we need to prepare for. But the smart Dems would say, you know what? We're in bad shape now. Let's bolster our resources, try to do good in the midterms, and let the Republicans, who are probably going to win anyway, dump this in their lap. And they can do the same thing they're doing now, which, oh, see, we were doing good, and then when he took over, it went to shit, where it's going to go to shit anyway. It'll be certainly better to have Trump in office than to have one of them in office, but I'm not a Trump worshiper. He is, much like I said early on when he first won the first time, he's not a political ideologue. He's not like one of us in that sense. He's a pragmatist, a populist of sorts, and he buys into the whole central banking model. He buys into just the whole geopolitical model of, he's a huge supporter of Israel. That's not going to stop, unfortunately. Where I don't think we should, I just want us to not give resources to other countries. It has nothing to do with being against Israel. It's just anything. It's a zero-sum game. Resources is a zero-sum game. Resource allocation is a zero-sum game. Anything that's allocated to any other country is allocated away from the United States. And that's not what the United States leaders should be doing unless we have a massive surplus, which LOL. KFC Canada has gone halal chicken. Right. And these are the things that I've always talked about, not to switch too much, but it doesn't matter what you think about, because a lot of people point to, oh, the economic benefit of immigration, which is bullshit, just blanket statement that doesn't always apply, and it barely applies at all. Could theoretically apply, but it doesn't, it's not just about economic benefit. It's about just change. And when you have a bunch of people who believe different things, have different value systems, different language, different cultural habits, different whatever, and you bring a lot of them into somewhere, that country will change. If you think those things are good, then you might like the change. If you think they're bad, you won't like the change. But the fact that it's changing is guaranteed, and these are what we're seeing. So do you want to have Sharia law and halal meals and all this other stuff that comes along with being in a Muslim country? No. If that were the case, I would have moved to a Muslim country. So then I don't want that to happen here or in Canada. So I view it as a negative change, but it is a change. And that is what happens. Even that's why the whole conservative approach to, I just want the immigration to be legal. It's fine if it's legal. That doesn't change that. It happens whether it's legal or not. Just like if you have a bunch of vegetarians move into a town of ranchers, eventually there's going to be problems when the numbers get enough. It's going to change that the whole culture of that town and of the businesses and of the local government. We need a full. Yeah, I don't know. I don't. RFK Jr. is solidly Democrat. His position on guns and whatnot is a deal breaker for me. But he's certainly far better than any other Democratic candidate just by being a semi-rational. But I could not vote for him. Yeah, Minnesota. Yeah, they have a lot of Somalians there taking over some areas. Sherm dog, Trump will mop the floor with her in debate. Yeah, I mean, it would be brutal. He would have to be careful not to, because she'll just try to hide behind, oh, you're being mean to a woman, which that has its own potential backfire. If you're like, oh, you're going to stand up to Putin when you can't stand up to Trump, being mean to you. Hey, dude, Tom M. But yeah, so the basic thing is be prepared for uncertainty. It's going to get weird. Like I said, for those of you who haven't been here for the last few minutes, we could make a "We Didn't Start the Fire" type song about what's happened in the last 6 months with so much crazy. Just look at the past month. We've had everything from Trump was almost guaranteed. We were talking about in the live stream with JJ and Russ that it's very likely they're going to do whatever they can to actually put him in a jail cell. To all of those dropped away. Assassination attempt nicks his ear. Now he's back to having huge support and front runner priced in as the president. Joe Biden dropping out. Democratic Party in disarray. Massive global cyber issues / attack / something. And that is in weeks. That is weeks. It's been weeks. And this has all happened. It's total madness. It's impossible. And the election is still months away. And this has been in the last 6 weeks. And we have 6 more months till the election. So not 6, sorry, like 4. But right, we got August, September, October, November, 4 months. But look at what's happened in the past 4 weeks. Insane. And you know what? Here, I'm going to put on, I need a tinfoil hat. Instead, I'll put my poker coaching hat on. Someone was laughing at me when I said my poker bankroll. When I was flash my cash, I was like, I was being serious. That's my poker bankroll. This is my pokercoaching.com hat. But it's my tinfoil hat for now. Sorry, I forgot what I was saying. So here's my tinfoil hat. If you don't like conspiracies, you can tune out for a second, because here's if I had to choose a conspiracy theory about the recent unaliving attempt, assassination attempt, Donald Trump. Bring it in, guys. This is what I would say. This is what I would say. Of course, conspiracy theories aren't real. Only the most common outcome is the one that ever happens, the most likely, and it's far more likely that a bajillion insanely weird coincidences all happened at once. So, but here is, if that's not true, this is what I think happened. People say that it was like a botched assassination attempt, that they were stupid. I don't think so. I think that was an excellent shot that I probably some kid shooting irons, and he's like retardy Oswald, as they called him, did not make that good of a shot, possibly, that they recorded. I think that had this been a giant conspiracy from the powers that be, that the only thing that they messed up is that they pushed for a headshot, and that's why they had CNN live streaming one of Trump debates, which they had almost never done before, or very rarely done. That's why they had photographers taking pictures at insanely fast shutter speeds, enough to catch bullet residue of just a guy standing in full sun speaking. And if they had gone center mass and didn't want the picture plastered all over the internet of Trump's head exploding, that he would be dead right now. And because it wouldn't have mattered if he turned a little bit, it would have punched right through his heart, either quarter inch one way or the other, half, it doesn't matter. If they'd gone center mass like most snipers do, I think he would be dead. But they wanted a blown up head, and that's why this made the difference. And that then all of a sudden, the next thing is, look, if that was true, if they had some sort of coordination between all these different elements, stand down orders, whatever, that there would have to be records of that. These conversations, something would be there. Then what happens? Then billion computers worldwide get put into a mode, and basically lockdown mode, in a way that someone has to physically go up to them and mess with them in a way that cybersecurity experts have said could almost never happen just by mistake. So tinfoil hat off. Of course, that's not what happened. That's what my brain pieces is put together. Let me know what you guys think about that as being a possibility. Definitely wild stuff. Yeah, and he had this kid who had like drones and encrypted stuff, but no social media presence, and all this. So shady. So shady. So many shady things. At the very least, you have to say that, like, if you want to make the claim that all of these weird things just happen in a coincidence, and you think that that's all there is to it, that's fine. That's a legit position to take. But you have to accept that at this point, you're talking about something that is not, it is still extremely unlikely. You know, for all those things to just be coincidences is in itself extremely unlikely. To the point that you're not talking about a huge chasm now in terms of something that is extremely likely and something that is way unlikely. The massive conspiracy theory versions of this are still probably maybe more unlikely in your mind than it all being a coincidence. But to have this many levels of things adding up in a weird way to just be coincidences is in and itself, you're taking a position that something extremely unlikely happened. So just admit that you also think something extremely unlikely happened, and get off the high horses about, because that the problem is when people talk about these things or try to evaluate the situation, it's not that they come to the conclusion that everything is really just as it seems at face value and just a lot of weird stuff happened. Because like I said, that does happen too. That's a legit position to take. If you're talking about one extremely unlikely thing or another extremely unlikely thing, either way you land on, it's going to be something extremely unlikely. So in and of itself, saying that I think something extremely unlikely happened is not a bad position to take. The problem is that these people approach them. If you said, I think this was some kind of, they instantly go, psh. And in their mind, that doesn't happen. They've already written it off before seeing any evidence, before actually deciding which is unlikely and why. They just say, if it's unlikely and it's in this category of things that doesn't really happen in real life, then it didn't happen. Just like the doctors that I went to, and I said, I need you to take an MRI just to make sure I don't have a tumor. My words exactly. And they said, oh, because that doesn't happen to young people. You know what I mean? And that was why they made the decision, not because the evidence didn't point to it, not even just because it was unlikely, just because they look at what is the most common thing. This is what it is. We go after that. And that's the way people's mind. Surveillance Man said he had a vest. Sure, he had soft body armor. There's no way he was wearing rifle plates. And even a 223 would punch right through soft armor. Doesn't matter. I seriously doubt he was wearing rifle plates. You can usually tell if someone is wearing plates, even a big dude like Trump with a suit on. Like, there's no way he was wearing plates. He probably had soft armor on, but that only stops handgun calibers. So let me know. I'm going to get off here in a few minutes. We got to talk about the uncertainty. Well, let me just go over briefly the uncertainty, what you do about the uncertainty. This goes into the video I was talking about with the CrowdStrike stuff. What are the things that we rely on a daily basis? I think the big one that's most likely to get disrupted, that is my weak area, is information flow communications. Less so, a little bit less so for electricity. Was he wearing rifle plates on his head though? No. But my point was, if they just wanted to kill him, the most high percentage chance you would go, any sniper would go center mass. But then there's weirdness, like why was it being live streamed? Why were they taking super high shutter speed photos of just a speech? I think they wanted a head explosion. When Stag Chili sponsorship, I think just because of the type of things I talk about, as if the last several minutes were indicative of that, I was never likely to happen, but I should reach out to them and be like, yo, I pimped your stuff pretty hard. How about giving me a few cases of Stag Chili and I'll, keep the fervor alive. But it's got to be the Laredo. I don't care about the other ones. It's all Stag Chili Laredo. It is. And I just had a High Desert Pioneer got on here and said he didn't have any, so we may have to do a fundraiser to get him into the prepping lifestyle to which I wish him to become accustomed, having cases and cases of Stag Chili. He's got like live ducks and stuff, so that helps, but he's still got to have some stag. The ladder was there. Apparently there's one that was like already there. Apparently there's a lot of that still isn't. And keep in mind, there has still not been like an official press. And now we know too, we knew at the time, but now it's been officially proven that the Secret Service themselves lied about certain elements of this, about the campaign or Trump's people asking for resources and being denied. They officially came out and said that wasn't true. And now they've admitted that it is true. Yes, so many SPQR says many decent cameras in high light full sun have a shutter speed of around 1/30,000th of a second. My camera does that. Sure. From what I've seen, I don't think that's fast enough, would it, for a bullet being 1.5 feet of the image? So obviously from what I've seen, I'm not a photographer. I know that they said you're not capturing even the bullet in that image of the streak. It's like residue. And so given the speed of the bullet and that streak of stuff, they estimated that the shutter speed on that camera was like 1/8,000, like 1/8,000th of a second or higher. And to really capture and that would never be a setting that they would use for that scenario. But like, again, that's secondhand knowledge or information for me because I'm not a photographer. So I don't know how weird or not weird that would be. Who is I'm not convinced that there was someone on the water tower. I've seen images that might suggest it, but I've also seen some that were pretty obviously faked being shared around, which, maybe people are doing on purpose. But obviously there's just a lot that does not add up, a lot of shenanigans. This guy having overseas encrypted accounts and just how easy he was able, and the decision specifically to not put people on the roof for bogus fake reasons. And just the lack of action and all sorts, and Trump still being allowed on stage. Like I said, if you want to think that was all just malfeasance and incompetence and stupidity, just adding up, you're still talking about an extremely unlikely event. So either way, we're talking about an extremely unlikely event. Right, it didn't record the actual bullet. It was like a string of blood, basically. Because to get an actual bullet in flight, I think you would have to be closer to like 1/32,000th of a second. And at the exact moment, or like, it's taking like thousands of pictures. But the point was that the cameras were set to something that would be expected to be used when you're catching more of a fast moving event of some kind, not just someone there talking. Yeah, like no matter what, we know, like SPQR says, that we know they knew a guy with a rifle was in a position for dozens of minutes and didn't do anything about it, but didn't even tell Trump or tell him to maybe get off the stage or have people get up around him or whatever. They didn't do anything. So that alone is just like inexcusable. But very interesting stuff. So what can we do about this uncertainty? Make sure you have some sort of alternate. That's the one I'm going to focus on, is alternate communications and sources of information for when stuff, when CrowdStrike type stuff happens. Next one is power. Make sure you have some minor level of power generation, even if it's just like a Jackery or one of those little things like that, and there's some solar panels. And like I mentioned in my last one, go check out JJ's video on how to build your own cheap solar generator setup, solar battery charger. And my slope, yeah. What the craziest thing about the slope argument for that roof is that it wasn't even the roof that the agents were on at that same event had more of a slope. So it wasn't even a good excuse, because you're just like, what? And like they do slopes like that all the time. So it was obvious that these people are lying, and you just never know what exactly they're lying about or why. The absolute most charitable I think you could possibly be about the scenario and still maintain any sort of intellectual honesty or rigor is to say that these people, at the very least, were like purposefully weakening his security detail over a period of time in the hopes that something would happen, but they weren't actually involved in the planning. That's like the absolute most I'm willing to concede. And I think it could obviously be far more nefarious than that. But just a quick one for tonight, guys. So make sure you got power generation, some comms, and all your basic preps. Cache. So what we're seeing with these modern type SHTFs is just the ability to react quickly and have flexibility without all these electronic systems in place. So make sure you got your cache, make sure you got some power generation and a little bit of gas, and then all your basic preps, and you should be good to go. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will try to keep making some more videos, and we'll talk to you soon.